In the rusted sports fields and empty classes, the rain that blows through the closed but broken glass windows, the barrier between conceived and actualized reality becomes blurred, and all just to preserve a little hope that there's still some peace left on the earth. When the world falls apart in serious zombie or otherwise apocalyptic stories, it isn't uncommon to see a small group develop. This goes many different ways. Sometimes a leader is elected, and sometimes they make full decisions as a group. But normally, after the first bit of calm, the tensions start to get tighter. Disagreements, arguments, and fights break out. It's all because they're worn down. They're getting more and more sick of their situations. Their morale runs short, their hope gets harder to hold on to, and their patience runs thin. Normally then, the group fractures, and something goes wrong. In times like this, a certain type of person may try to rise, but rarely do they appear in a situation that they can make any real effect. Normally, that failure is because of a different, strong-headed person appearing in the group and stopping them in their tracks, or because the person attempting to rise to the occasion can't actually hold the weight of the responsibility that they're taking on, and so they buckle under the strain of their own unique responsibility and fail. This is the person that maintains morale, keeps people in good spirits and high hopes, and keeps things from being more grim than they already are. But as the nights become bleaker, it gets harder to do that. While there is technically not a main character in School Live, or Gakkou Gurashi, this is the role that Yuki takes. That is something particularly rare. And that is, even just despite being a small girl, she has the strength to carry that role. And not only carry it, but gradually develop into one of the most dependable members of the group. Gakkou Gurashi is that show that people normally describe as a cute girls anime with zombies, or a slice of life with a dark twist. Unfortunately, largely due to trying to keep most of the interesting twists in the anime spoiler-free, the series becomes nearly impossible to talk about to any truly great capacity when trying to highlight the unique and interesting aspects it has. The difficulty is then multiplied as the manga and the anime are completely different in what was covered. Unlike my Girls Last Tour video from a couple months ago, School Live is structured different from the manga to the anime, and the manga goes far longer with a much different ending. I would say the anime covers the first 5 volumes of the manga, but that would be sort of inaccurate as well, since most of the key moments and plot points of the manga have been completely removed from the adaptation. The order of events have been reconstructed, certain characters have been added or taken from the story, and many anime-only scenes are added onto or newly created to fit the structure of the adaptation. But this isn't a manga-anime comparison video. I just wanted to make clear that these two works are largely very different, despite being the same series. So, if you did happen to see the anime, there is still a lot of new ground to be covered in the manga. The manga places its famous reveal almost instantly. Within a few pages of Yuki visiting and moving around the school, you see vague people in the background, but once a wider shot reveals that the only one there is Yuki, the room has been rotted and utterly torn apart. This lets you know right off the bat that Yuki isn't entirely aware of her surroundings and is instead coping with some sort of extreme trauma by pretending the zombie outbreak hasn't happened. The manga starts with a codependent relationship of its main 3 characters. Yuki, the joyful member of the group who is obviously deluded, Kurumi, the most offensive and athletic member of the group who takes care of the action, and Yuuri. I don't know, I guess she calms tensions between other members, or is like some kind of mom to the group, but she's harder to place, especially because her arc starts coming on fairly early into the manga. Yuuri is perhaps one of the most emotional and mentally fragile members of the group, despite putting up the initial facade otherwise. The way the story initially sets up is, Yuki's deluded false view of reality makes her generally weaker and unable to handle the planning that Yuuri does, or the action that Kurumi takes, but she serves as the morale for the group and keeps them together, as especially Yuuri seems to be weak in that regard. It's a sort of codependent relationship that, while at first glance may not seem like Yuki is doing much, in reality, she's the glue that's holding everyone's nerves together. For me, I wasn't entirely sold on the manga until the introduction of the 4th member, who they rescue from the shopping mall as a hold-up sole survivor. Miki, the youngest of the 4, probably the most intelligent and most direct with others, she's the one that worries about the logistics and likelihood of plans carrying out, which is probably why I liked her addition to the story, and this is where School Live started to become more of an interesting story in my eyes. Miki instantly calls out the codependent relationship of Yuki and Yuuri specifically, striking a nerve and causing some conflict of ideology. Miki needs to figure out things for herself and weigh if this delusion was more harmful to Yuki and the group than beneficial. Since she was still somewhat of an outsider there too, it makes everyone's nerves more on edge. After an enjoyably uncomfortable scene of Miki repeatedly confronting Yuki with the reality of the world, she came to cautiously accept the group's dynamic. Something early on I found fun as well was the mental state of Yuki herself. Miki does some research in the library about multiple personality disorder, and if in fact it is a purposeful coping mechanism, or if her delusions have actually caught a tight psychological grip on Yuki's well-being. In other words, it becomes a game to be curious like Miki is, about just how far stuck Yuki is exactly. Yuki breaks free for moments of terror in the manga, and seems to recognize the other points of reality in what's going on, keeping her calm and doing what is best for the situation. Eventually, Yuki seems to break free entirely. So it was fun to debate with myself while I read, and in general, I think Yuki is probably the most interestingly written character in the series, offering surprisingly powerful scenes when her calm understanding seemed to hit her face. It was almost like Yuki was acting as some sort of guardian angel. Yuuri is probably the most interesting as well, as even though she tries to look calm, is probably the most on edge, seen easily taking offense and getting argumentative, and having the most breakdowns in the manga by far. I found this dynamic interesting as Yuuri sort of plays the role of a put-together person, doing planning and keeping the group organized, as I said earlier, and keeping Yuki safe. But especially in the middle section of the manga, when they are on the road, Yuki and the other girls are shown to be the ones keeping Yuuri safe, even if it's just largely from her own consuming despair and delusions. Kurumi is a real gamer. Okay, maybe that's not the right way to describe her. Being the so-called meat-headed athletic girl, Kurumi assumes her action and follows through, choosing to largely not think about it or think about it later. Or rather, that's how she wants to appear to the rest of them. While certainly everyone is dealing with their own demons, Kurumi does a good job at suppressing it from others, and as Yuki tells her late in the story, you need to let others know when you're feeling lonely. She wakes up from nightmares of her past, as well as fears of her present and soon future, or early on fumbles quietly with a gun on the roof. Kurumi certainly does worst when her thoughts are given room to take root. Maybe that then is why she preoccupies herself with so much scouting, clearing areas, gathering resources, killing zombies. It shows that she has come up with a healthy way to manage and cope, at least considering the situation. And the way she does it not only helps her keep her mind off of things, but also benefits those around her. Or, at least, I think that's what she would hope is going on. I particularly like the conversation during the previously referenced gun roof scene, where despite it not looking like Kurumi was too torn up over it, and maybe she wasn't, considering the usage of the gun for what one may imply or think, Miki takes the opportunity to throw the gun out. Kurumi is first alarmed and asks why she would possibly do that, but Miki tells her, since they're just amateurs, a gun won't do much to zombies. They can't shoot very well, aim, focus, unless it's a perfect shot that's real up close, the brain's not going to get hit or really kill it anyways. It's very apparent to the reader that Kurumi's sharp shovel does a much more effective job already, and it draws Kurumi to understand. If not for the zombies, what else are they going to use that gun for exactly? Exactly. Nothing. Because they aren't going to quit. They aren't going to give up. They are going to keep living. I think this scene in particular shows Miki's really adept ability to read her friends, despite knowing them in the shortest amount of time, and in general, it's interactions like this that make these more fleshed out characters feel more special. All sorts of crazy stuff happen in school life, mostly by surprise. Kurumi revisiting her home, the raid on the mall, the helicopter crash, the elementary school, college, Randall facility, but I wanted to focus this video more on the characters. Because, like many zombie stories, caring about the characters is what makes these tense moments worth something. Not only that though, as who these characters are, and how they struggle to remain themselves in a morbid world, is the general theme of the series. After a grim turn of events late in the story, Yuki and the group begin to realize what they think is most important, why they continue this guise of being a school club despite it being obvious that that was never the case, why they pretend to graduate before they leave the high school or played games on a cultural festival day. Why did they do those things? Why were they important? For morale? Sure, but for the holders of those morales to stay the same, more importantly. Yuki realizes and tells them after her own bit of confusion that is why they can't separate or go alone. Because whenever you're alone, you don't know what kind of face you're making. You don't realize when you've lost who you once were. As a group, they can protect and keep each other intact. They can make it through, and still doing the things that they would have done, not fearing the violence changing them. The idea of not surviving, but living is drawn out in most apocalyptic stories, but School Live goes out of its way to clarify what that is. Living isn't just having hot showers and a nice meal. It's realizing who you and the ones you care about are, and helping each other stay on track, keeping the most admirable human traits within you safe, even through the face of hardship. To fully grasp how much more stuff happens than I specifically laid out, at the end of Volume 5, they leave the high school, so more than half of the series went entirely untouched by the anime. They hole up at a college with a bunch of new characters, and also the origins of the zombie disease and the cure are revealed, and a whole lot of other crazy stuff. So yeah, if you saw the anime, there's a lot to enjoy here, and some of the most hard-hitting moments by far come later on. Finally, if you want to read School Live in the best possible translation and image quality, as well as help me out since during this pandemic ad rates mean almost nothing, you can read School Live on BookWalker, and using my code HIDING, you will get 600 yen off your first purchase. My link also sends you to a personalized recommendation list that I put together if you want other suggestions, but I have School Live at the top of that list. If you want to have manga and light novels available digitally anywhere you go, BookWalker is the best possible place to do so. And their parent company, Kadokawa, is actually a Japanese company that officially publishes and distributes the manga and light novels available all through Japan. Meaning, when you make a purchase on BookWalker, your money goes straight into keeping the Japanese industry running. More so at least than if you pirated or got them in most other legal methods. Also, if you buy 2 books or more, I get the kickback, which is great, because as I said just a moment ago, YouTube ad rates have dropped lower than I've ever experienced in the last 3 years since the pandemic started. I'll be trying to respond to as many comments as I can, as always, and I'll be available at Hiding-kun on Twitch almost every day at 4:30 p.m. CT. So come by and chat or comment so I can respond to you. Also, if you want even more in-depth School Live videos, check out Urban the Myth on YouTube. He's basically made 500 well-edited and detailed videos on the manga and the anime. Thanks finally to my patrons. The Single Way Out, Whizbang2093, Dolphinos, Frillneck Lizard, CJ, Sam Lloyd, Jose Ramirez, and all of my other patrons and Twitch supporters for continually making this possible. Finally, I hope to see you all soon.